恭请大德圣听，为此法会及一切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱世，离苦得乐，殊证无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss, and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputo che. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Hello everyone, welcome to class number 31 of the Medicine Master Buddha classes. As usual, we'll begin the class by reciting Medicine Master Buddha's name 7 times. So I'm going to invite everyone to join me in putting your palms together. Namo, quelling disasters, lending life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one. Okay, let me share the next PowerPoint. So just before the class started, I asked if anyone had any what's I going to say? Questions or remarks about last week's class or anything else in general. I know in the WhatsApp there is a question that's being asked that we shall talk about. But in the meantime, anyone else? Okay, David. David has. Would you like to unmute your mic, David, and ask, or do you want to just type it into the chat box? So in the meantime, while we wait for David, I'll just do a quick recap. From last week, we wrapped up the 12 vows of Medicine Master Buddha, and I shared all the different advice and instructions Shifu gave to us regarding vows, and I said try to think of how we look at vows and precepts. If we look at precepts as a way to keep us safe, for example, if we are driving, we can take precepts to be the traffic lights, the lines that are drawn on the road to tell us what to do, so that when we drive, we are safe. So driving is a metaphor for our everyday life, and the precepts in everyday life keeps us safe. But if you just drive around aimlessly, if you have no idea of what you want to do with your life or where you want to end up, you can keep on going around in circles. You know, sometimes you get closer to a place, sometimes you get further away, and you don't have anything to guide you. So vows are a way to give yourself directions. When you come to a junction, whether you go straight, you turn left, you turn right, what do? That's where the vows come in. And the vows tell you, okay, remember you made this vow, you said, don't get angry. You wanted to have more patience. So if you turn left, you get angry. But if you turn right or if you go straight, then you will overcome your anger. Then, okay, then you know, okay, if I really want to transform myself, I cannot turn left. Then you go straight or you go right. So gradually, through your vows, as your intention through your practice grows stronger, and you are clearer on how you want to achieve or how you want to get to your destination, then your vows get correspondingly updated. And as your vows get updated, so do your directions. And then as you are driving, you get closer and closer to where you want to go. So for some people, that might be the Pure Land. So from far away, you can see the Pure Land. It's like a mountain. Okay, if you see pictures of Mount Fuji in Japan, most of the pictures are taken from very far away because the mountain is really high and tall. And if you take the photo from miles away, you can see more of the mountain. So you can see the mountain or your destination really far away, but you're not quite sure how to get there yet. So that's where the vows will help you. And as you get closer, your vows will also correspondingly, get updated like a GPS if you're practicing right. And today, what we have is Shufu's unsurpassed Dharma door. So Shufu actually makes a guarantee. Towards the end of the lecture, I'll share with you, Shufu gave us a guarantee of how our vows will work. And that's towards the end of today's class. And so Shufu, reassures us. He wants us to have faith and confidence, not just in the practice, but in ourselves. And he is showing us, he's showing us how to read a map. Let's put it this way. So we all have our own maps. So Shufu is going to show us how to read the map so we can have confidence in our own maps or our own vows so that we can reach our destinations. Okay, where is my shared screen? No, not that one. This one. Okay, just give me a second because I'm not seeing my okay, now I see it. Okay, now I see it. Okay, so Shufu says, I now have an unsurpassed Dharma door that I intend. Okay, before I read the slide, let me ask, can everyone see the shared screen that has the title Shufu's Unsurpassed Dharma Door?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
you.
All right,
Yes.
great. Thank you, everyone. If only I can get that kind of response when I ask if anyone has any questions. Okay, Shufu's Unsurpassed Dharma Door. Shufu says, I now have an unsurpassed Dharma door that I intend to speak for you. But before I tell it to you, I should remind you that seeking the Dharma is not an easy matter. Therefore, all of you should first agree to rely on the Dharma to cultivate. And then I will explain this unsurpassed Dharma to you. The Dharma door consists of making vows before the Buddhas every single day. Okay, Shufu hasn't shared the vows yet. He just says that first, he says it's not easy. Okay, seeking the Dharma is not easy. Why does Shufu say that? Because it's hard to practice. It's hard to transform yourself. When you transform yourself, you are fighting against your biggest enemy, which is yourself. You are the person who are the most stubborn to change. Just try changing your habits and you figure that out pretty quickly. And if there's time today, I'll share a personal experience that I've been having about self transformation. And then social food gives a condition first. It says it's not going to be easy. So you should first agree to rely on the Dharma. Don't rely on anything else. Don't rely on what your friend says. Don't rely on outwardly ways that tells you that the next iPhone will make you happy, or going on holiday will give you what you want, or this or that. Don't rely on externals. So Shufu first wants you to agree within yourself to rely on the Dharma. And then Shufu says this Dharma door consists of making vows before the Buddhas every single day. Okay, as important as eating. All right, you eat every day, right? Yes, everyone here make sure they will not miss a single meal. If you are used to 3 meals, you have to have your 3 meals, or maybe 2 meals out of 3. But everyone here make sure we eat. You all get to eat something every day if you can help it. So Shufu says vows are just like that. Okay, what are the unsurpassed Dharma door? So Shufu says, living beings are boundless. I vow to save them. Afflictions are endless. I vow to cut them off. Dharma doors are limitless. I vow to study them all. The Buddha way is unsurpassed. I vow to realize it. Do these vows seem familiar? It should, because every time you come to the monastery, these are the vows that you make. These are the vows that we make every single day in the monastery. Like Shufu says, because it should be done every day, we have incorporated it into our everyday, how you say, not schedule. The motions that we go through in the temple every day contains these vows. Okay. So these vows are the vows that you make when you take refuge with the triple jewel. So it's called the 4 vast or 4 all-encompassing vows of a bodhisattva, because it is through these vows that you become a Buddha. So these 4 vows are the basic vows that every bodhisattva should make. So if you want to be a bodhisattva, these are the vows that you should really investigate. And if you recall the 12 vows of Medicine Master Buddha, and if you have read Star Bodhisattva's vows, Guan Yin's vows, Shufu's vows, Amitabha Buddha's vows, all of those vows, in one way or another, contain these elements, these 4 elements of the basic Bodhisattva vows. So basically, these are like the foundation for all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas vows. Okay. So let's go through it one by one. Let's go to the first one. The first one is living beings are boundless. I vow to save them all. And it says, Shufu says, living beings within the mind are limitless. But our first concerns are the deviant and confused living beings, which should be taken across by means of proper wisdom. The deceitful and false living beings, which should be taken across by means of humility. The unwholesome living beings, which should be taken across by means of goodness. And the jealous living beings, which should be taken across by means of respectfulness. Okay. So, Shufu being true to a Chan monk first turns our focus inside. When we hear of living beings, we always look outside. But Shufu explains it as the living beings within the mind are limitless. So there are a few ways to go about explaining this. Most of which I am, I do not have the experience and the wisdom to explain properly. But what I can say is that first, the first steps to understanding what living beings within the mind means is to figure out your thoughts. All the thoughts that are flowing through your mind, you have to figure those out first before you actually can be effective in considering living beings outside. It doesn't mean that you ignore the living beings that we see outside or that we take to be external from us. We can that perspective is actually very useful. For example, one of my motivations to get up in the morning and practice every day is knowing that there are a lot of living beings in this world that are suffering. There's a lot of natural disasters going on, causing people to lose all their possessions. There's famine going on. There's also a lot of suffering inflicted by living beings, not just natural disasters, but living beings, humans especially. I think humans are the only one that love to inflict suffering on others. There were just a few days ago, there was the kidnapping of how many was it 300 plus schoolboys in Nigeria, and the boys has just been rescued, but they were forced to walk through the jungle, not given anything to eat, maybe just very little food to eat, and they were beaten as well. That kind of fear and suffering living beings are going through. Okay, so coming back to living beings within the mind, how I like to see it is first be aware of your own affliction and your own sufferings. So what are the things that causes afflictions and sufferings? Well, Shufu says that deviant and confused living beings, which should be taken across by means of proper wisdom. So you use wisdom to help people who are ignorant and confused or following deviant or external paths. And then deceitful and false living beings. And interestingly enough, they should be taken across by means of humility. I guess it's because people who are deceitful and who are, they're not honest. They want to be someone who they're not. But when they see someone who's humble and they see someone who's satisfied being who they are, who recognizes their own mistakes, they're very open. They don't cover their shortcomings. And they, with humility, I guess, comes also with true humility is when someone points out your mistake, you graciously accept and you try to change. So by showing them this way, where the ego doesn't try to protect itself, you are showing people who are deceitful a different way of handling their own thoughts within their minds. And then the unwholesome living beings should be taken across by means of goodness. And then jealous living beings should be taken across by means of respectfulness, which is also very interesting. If someone is really jealous, I guess it's because they, what would make you jealous? Either there's someone you don't like that enjoying things that you think they shouldn't have, or you want things that you think you don't have. But I guess it's also comes down to the people who you think do not give you the recognition that you are due, not that you are due, that you think you should deserve. So respectfulness is a way to cross these people over. So that's very interesting, because Shufu is actually telling you or telling us, when you recognize these things in yourself, this is the medicine that you should take. This is your antidote. Okay. So what I want to do with this slide right now is to spend a bit more time on proper wisdom. Okay. So Shufu says that when we take refuge with the triple jewel, we make these 4 vast vows. So Shufu says, ask yourself, have I saved any living beings? If so, then why not save a few more? That is assuming you already have. Okay. And if not, then all the more reason to quickly resolve to rescue living beings. So meaning, if you look at living beings as inside of you or as your thoughts, then have you transformed any of your thoughts? Has your practice up to now made you a better person? Okay, so the 6th Petrarch says, good knowing advisors, the living beings within your mind are deviant and confused thoughts, deceitful and false thoughts, unwholesome thoughts, jealous thoughts, vicious thoughts. All these thoughts are living beings. And then he says, the self-nature of each one of them must take itself across. That is true crossing over. I'll repeat that again. So he says that, he said, all these deceitful, false thoughts, unwholesome, jealous thoughts, he says all these thoughts are living beings. And then he says, the self-nature of each one of them must take itself across. Okay, I'll say that again, the 3rd time. The self-nature of each one of them must take itself across. That is true crossing over. So you let the self-nature of each one cross itself. So you don't have to do any work. Is that right? So is it confusing? Okay, so think of it this way. Once you have mastered all your unwholesome thoughts, then only then will you be able to handle living beings with their problems. Because why? You know how to solve your own problems, and you, you have no more baggage left. That means whenever you meet a living being, you don't have to worry about yourself anymore, and you can concentrate 100% on the person you're trying to save. But the part about the self-nature of each one must take itself across is the medicine, or what I call the medicine, where you use wisdom for deviant and confused beings. You use humility for the deceitful and false beings. You use goodness for unwholesome beings. And you use skillful means of respectfulness for jealous living beings. Okay. And then, Shufu says it is to take across by means of right views the living beings of deviant views, affliction, and delusion within your own mind. And then once you have right views, use prajna wisdom to destroy the living beings of delusion, confusion, and falsehood. So Shufu says, use right views to take care of deviant views. And then once you have right views, you use prajna wisdom to destroy the living beings of delusion, confusion, and falsehood. Okay, what does that really mean? Okay, what is right views? Right views is a common term that's used most commonly in the Noble Eightfold Path. And it belongs to the, the wisdom section of the path. There's 8 and it's divided into 3. So what does the Buddha say about right view? This is how the Buddha classifies right view. And why? And I'm going to spend a bit of time on right view because right view is really important. Okay. Buddha says, what is right view? Knowledge with regard to stress or affliction. Knowledge with regard to the origination of stress or affliction. Knowledge with regard to the cessation of stress. Knowledge with regard to the way of practice leading to the cessation of stress. This is called right view. Okay, in other words, right view is understanding what is stress. Many people don't really understand what is affliction, so they go throughout their lives, seeking enjoyment, not realizing that it actually leads to affliction in the present moment or in a future moment. So the Buddha says, understanding what is affliction, first of all, and then understanding where does affliction come from, understanding that affliction can actually end, and understanding what the proper way to end affliction. This is right view. So in other words, how you practice, how we apply ourselves in our practice, for example, in reciting the Buddha's name, in reciting Guan's name, in reciting the Great Compassion Mantra or Medicine Master Buddha's mantra, you have to be able to have right view in order to do those practices effectively. If not, then you may be, doing the form of the practice, but it's just like you're driving around without vows. You can be going around in circles, and you can be very busy driving. You can spend all your time driving, turning here, turning there, but you never end up where you want to go. Okay. So how right view works is that's where you begin in Buddhism, actually in everything in the world. Let's go back. Let's stick to Buddhism. First, we obtain right view from, say, reading sutras, reading shastras, which is like commentaries from Shufu or all the different monks, listening to lectures like what we are doing right now, having discussions about the Dharma, thinking over what we study or what we hear or what we read. Those are all ways that we can obtain right view. But that right view that we obtain is called mundane right view. It is just information or knowledge. It is not wisdom yet. Okay, it is theory. It may be right, but as far as say, if I am concerned, if I read about vows and I know everything about vows, but I don't make those vows myself, as far as I am concerned, it's just theory. Okay, it is like looking at pictures of food, but not eating the food itself. Okay, so that's mundane right view. So the next step after we have obtained mundane right view is we put that understanding into practice. So if we go along with the Noble Eightfold Path, right view will then right view will then lead to right speech, right action, and right livelihood, which is basically how we use the precepts. Okay, the three how you say precepts cover our mouth, how we use our mouth, which is speech, and our thoughts and our body, which can be translated into right action and right livelihood. So that's where we put our efforts into. That's where the practice comes into play. And then the second component of the Noble Eightfold Path is the concentration side, which is made up of right effort and right mindfulness and right concentration. And then the third part is the wisdom part of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is made up of right view, which is what we are discussing right now, and right intention. Okay, so what do we learn when we have mundane right view that will translate into practice in the form of how we hold the precepts, which govern our body, speech, and our mind, how we apply that mind in terms of our concentration and in terms of the effort that we put in to make sure that it is proper, and how do we make sure that our intention and behind our practice is correct, so that as we are driving on the road, we turn at all the correct. We turn right when we're supposed to turn right, and we go straight when we're supposed to go straight, and we turn left when we're supposed to turn left. Okay, what are we learning? Well, we learn how to make vows, which we've been doing in the last few classes. We learn how to set up intentions and reasons for our practice, meaning we know where we want to end up. That's in terms of the destination of our practice. Meaning also, when we do something, we actually know how it affects us how you say, and the possible or the desired outcome. Okay. In other words, you're not planting bananas hoping to get apples. You know that if you want apples, you should plant an apple tree or apple seeds to get apples. So you're not confused in the way you do things. Okay. What else do we learn about in mundane right view? Well, we learn about cause and effect. And we just had that discussion, or we haven't finished that discussion in the in our WhatsApp chat. There is a sutta called the Ita Sutta, or what is welcome. And in this sutra, the Buddha said 5 things are welcome: agreeable and pleasant and hard to obtain in this world. So what are the 5 things that are welcome, agreeable, pleasant, and hard to obtain? Meaning most people, most regular people want these 5 things. Okay, what are the 5 things? Long life. Everyone wants to have a healthy, long life. And that also means that, how you say, you don't suffer in the end of your, at the end of your life. You have a very natural, painless death. Yeah, like say dying in your sleep, for example, or dying watching TV is very peaceful. It's very there's no suffering involved, no illness involved. It's not prolonged suffering. Okay, so long life. Beauty, no one wants to be ugly. Everyone wants to be pleasant looking, which is why we spend a lot of money on makeup, on our hair, on clothes, for example. Yeah. So first is long life. Second one is being attractive or beauty, or at least not being ugly. Okay. The third one is pleasure, being comfortable. We like to enjoy pleasant things. A lot of our everyday lives is spent moving away from discomfort, seeking comfort, or at the very least, moving away from discomfort. How, as you're sitting right now or you're standing, the moment it happens so automatically, you're not aware of it until you pay attention. But the way we shift our weight, the way we move, um, for example, my hand holding my mouse, I have been moving it so I don't cause stress to my wrist. Some things like that. Moving away from discomfort, trying to find comfort. Okay, so long life, beauty, pleasure, and then status, which is fame. Some people like to be really famous. And then the last one is rebirth in heaven. Or in other words, you want to be in a better place where there's no suffering compared to where you are now. That can also, you can also take that to mean the Pure Land too, if that's your wish. So what does the Buddha say? Because we're talking about cause and effect right now. The Buddha says, now I tell you, these 5 things are not to be obtained by reason of prayers or wishes. If they were to be obtained by reason of prayers or wishes, who here would lack them? Okay, so the Buddha is saying, if you want long life, beauty, pleasure, fame, and a good rebirth, like rebirth in heaven or rebirth in the Pure Land, he says you're not going to get it by praying or by wishing. Because if it was so easy, everyone would have those things. So the Buddha is saying, it comes back to cause and effect. If you want long life, then you do the things that will give you long life, which means like what sometimes we liberate life, we don't take life, a vegetarian diet, we don't harm living beings. Those are the things that will give you a long life. So coming back to the planting metaphor, if you want apples, you have to plant apples. But then deviant and confused living beings, they plant all kinds of things, bitter gourd, they plant melons, they plant chili, hoping to get apples. And when they don't get apples, they don't even understand why. Because why? They don't understand cause and effect. So in mundane right view, cause and effect or karma is one thing that we have to understand, so that when we do our practice, we know actually what's going on, how we know the mechanism or the process of the Dharma, so that when we apply ourselves, we know that we are going to be effective. Okay. So when we know all this, right view governs our attitudes. It governs the way we perceive the world around us or our reality. And from governing our attitudes and how we perceive life, it also governs our actions. So without right view, you can be practicing, but you'll be just practicing blindly. In a few classes before, we spoke about the difference between um, merit and blessings when you do a good deed. So with right view, you can make sure that when whatever good deed that you do, you are planting merit. But without proper understanding, you can be doing the same thing, but you are just planting blessings. There's nothing wrong with blessings, but if your intention is to escape suffering, to go to the Pure Land, to say be a first stream, um, to be a stream enterer, excuse me, be a first stage arhat, like a stream enterer, you have to have a clear idea of what you're doing right now so that you can get the results later. But if you're just planting blessings, blessings are good because when it comes to you, you are happy, but it also means continuous rebirth in samsara. So you want to maximize all your good deeds by knowing how to apply your intentions and your mind so that you are planting merit instead. Okay. And without right view, as you are practicing, instead of transforming your bad habits, you can actually get worse. I know people who have recited the Buddha's name for 20, 30 years, but they, how you say, they actually get worse in their characters. They have less patience. They get upset more easily. And they're also really proud. Yeah. Instead of being more relaxed, more confident. Yeah. Without right view, uh, things are done according to rules, fear or superstition or a combination of those things. Why? Because you don't quite understand what you're doing. You know you have to do something. You know you have to, someone has told you to do it in that way. But because you see things as right or wrong, it becomes very rigid. Either you're doing it right or you're creating an offense. But in Buddhism, with right view, that happens less and less. You start to see things as being wholesome or unwholesome instead. That means in terms of cause and effect, you know that when you do something, you look at the results or the anticipated results of it coming back. So you start seeing as wholesome or skillful or as unwholesome or unskillful, not as right or wrong. One way to understand that is if you come to the monastery, typically a Chinese monastery, during our meal times, you will see people making offerings to the Buddhas. These offerings are put in bowls. It comes from the lunch that the monastics eat, and it is placed in front of the Buddhas for the meal offering ceremony. And from my experience, usually this is seen as a job. It is a task. It is something that needs to be done because we have to offer the food that we eat to the Buddhas before we can eat them. And it's also used in the meal offering ceremony as food for the golden wing, bird, and the rakshaksha, ghost mother, and for ghosts and spirits. And it's usually just seen as that. And there are ways to do the offering. You need to have a starch like a rice or bread, and then usually have like it depends. Everyone has different rules. A veggie or a representation of the food that's being served to the monastics. And usually the rule of thumb is that you have to make it look very nice. It has to be really adorned. And if you're not making it adorned, then you're doing something wrong. Okay. But that's not how I see it, because like I said, that's seeing things in forms in a way that's very rigid and in a way that breaks it up into right and wrong. It's black and white. But how I interpret the offerings is that, say, if you are the person who's preparing the offerings for the altar, if you can take a moment and instead of just seeing it as a job that needs to be completed so that we can hold a meal offering and then we can eat after that, if you contemplate that Shufu or the Buddha is right there, they're actually sitting in the Buddha hall, and that small bowl that you are um, making is actually for them. That's going to be their lunch. How would how would you be when you put that offering bowl together? Where would your mind be? Where would your heart be? Would you be busy talking to other people? Would you be looking around? Would you just be, have afflictions in your mind? Or so this is a thought experiment that you can try for yourselves right now. Okay, so then if Shufu is really there, I know what I would do. If I was preparing a bowl of rice for the Buddha or for Shufu, I would be very careful. I would be only thinking of what would be best for Shufu to eat. And I would want him to have the best of everything. And I would then naturally then the bowl becomes adorned. It doesn't have to look adorned. True adornment comes from the intention in the heart and the mind. And usually it translates into something that looks nice or thoughtfulness. There's thoughtfulness in putting it together. And then as you're offering the bowl, as you're putting the bowl on the altar, contemplating that Shufu is really there is very, very different from just putting the bowl there as something you need to do. It is night and day in terms of difference. It is, I can't even begin to explain how different it is. And then after you do that, you observe yourself with the right contemplation. If you look at yourself, you feel different. There's a happiness, there's a joy from the act of offering, which is very different from a thing that you have to do every day because this is the way we do it, this is how we do it, and you have to follow the rules so it's done properly. So with the right contemplation, a simple act of offering to the Buddha or to Shufu is not simple anymore. In fact, if people understand how profound this practice is, people will be fighting every day to want to do the offering. You say, "Oh, I want to do the offering today. I want to do the offering today. I want to do it every single day." But because why? Because you realize how transformative it can be, how it can change you from just how you say, it's simple, but it's really profound as well. And if you all remember the class that we had on merit and virtue, and what in the Earth Store Bodhisattva Sutra, the Buddha said about the role of your intention in making an offering, even as small as what did he say, a strand of hair or a drop of water, something to that effect. It is the heart that makes all the difference in cause and effect, not the act itself, but the contemplation and the intention behind the act. So if we can understand that, it transforms all the practices that we can do. So simple thing like offering a bowl of rice to Shufu or to Shufu's image. If you do it right, it changes how you feel. It makes you more patient. It makes you, first of all, it makes you very happy. It makes you feel really blessed. It makes you very happy. And because it makes you feel good, and pleasant, and your sense of well-being is really strong, you are able to handle afflictions differently. And when you do your practice, your other practices, like you recite the Buddha's name, you do it on a foundation that's very, very different, that enables you to go deeper in your concentration than otherwise. So that's why right view is very, very important, because it can make that you can have two people doing the same practice, but the effects can be totally different with right view. Okay. And then with right view also, you see the Dharma as skillful means. This is related to right and wrong. Okay. Without right view, right and wrong, everything becomes fear-based. But with right view, you realize that sometimes the Dharma, because people are different, the practices and the Dharma for different people has to be different, because you have different afflictions from the person next to you. You do have a different level of intelligence or understanding and ability. What else? You have different, in other words, you have your karma is different. So the medicine that you need to overcome your afflictions will be different as well. So you won't compare, you won't judge, you won't look at other people and say, oh, what they're doing is wrong, or they have to do it in exactly the same way as you do. So I have a story about this from Martin Verhoeven, who's a professor at the RBU. He used to be Heng Chao from the Three Steps One Bow. And so when he shared this story, he said he and Reverend Heng Shuo was doing the Three Steps One Bow, and then Shofu told Mahdi to eat more carrots, because Shofu said carrots are really, really nourishing. It's like a superfood. So he encouraged Mahdi to eat more carrots. Says you need more carrots. And a short while later, I'm not sure what was the circumstances, Mahdi saw carrots and said, oh, carrots are good. I better eat more carrots. I think this was after the Three Steps One Bow. And Shufu scolded him and told him, why are you eating the carrots? Carrots are very nutritious. So in other words, carrots are good, but there's a time and place for carrots. You can't just say because carrots are good, you have to eat carrots all the time. Eating carrots all the time because carrots are good makes it a rule, makes it rigid. There's no wisdom behind it. Okay, so without practice, without proper understanding, your practice may not be as effective as it is. Okay, you don't want to be looking at pictures of food all the time. You want to be eating the food instead. Okay, so what we talked about so far is, first we start with mundane right view, which we're doing right now. We are understanding about the Dharma. Then number two, we talk about how we apply that understanding into practice. Okay, so you start with mundane right view, then you put it into practice, and then as we practice, like right now, as we are all practicing, we have to pay attention to what's going on in ourselves. Look at yourself. Are you leading yourself? Where are you leading yourself in terms of your well-being? Are you getting better? Are your afflictions decreasing? Are you getting more patience? Or are you getting more uptight? Are you getting more, wound up? Okay, Tan just say there's no audio. And I've been talking for 15 minutes. I believe that people can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, let me tell Tan to please log in again. Everyone else seem to be able to hear. Okay. Okay, so where were we? We observe ourselves as we practice. We don't practice blindly, but we pay attention, we be mindful as to what? Are you being a better person? Before, I used to recite the Buddha's name last time. And the more I recited, the more I found that the more anxious I was. And because my goal was to recite a certain number of times in a given day. And because that was the instruction that was given to me. And so it became a goal, a hard goal that I had to achieve. And it gave me anxiety, and it became, my approach to the practice became really hard. It was very inflexible, and I realized that I had less patience. I got more upset easily. So that's what happens when you don't really understand what you're doing in your practice, and how you say, you don't pay attention to yourself as you practice. Practices are meant to transform you, for you to become a better version of yourself. But if you become worse, then ask yourself, are you applying yourself correctly? Do you understand what you're doing? Do you have proper right view? Excuse me, do you have right view or proper view in what you're doing? Okay. All right. So far we've talked about starting with right view, and then we talked about applying the right view to our practice. And then we talk about, as we are practicing, be mindful of ourselves. Okay, are you becoming a better person, or are you just giving yourself more afflictions? Okay, and then the result of this, if you do it well, is you get you increase your right view. You gain a better understanding of the practice. You gain a better understanding of the sutras. You gain a better understanding of yourself. Okay? Because why? You're being mindful. You're paying attention to what's going on. And then when you do that, naturally, it informs your practice, and your practice then, progresses. Because why? You understand more. And as you understand more, you gain more confidence, you become more relaxed, you have less afflictions, you stop looking at things as right and wrong, but more as from a cause and effect point of view, as skillful and unskillful. And then that leads to a more advanced application of your practice. And that leads to further reduction of your afflictions. That leads to better understanding. And then eventually, you are at a pure land right now. You don't have to wait until you actually die to understand what the pure land means. What else I was going to say? Or you basically, you just how you say, achieve what you want. Yeah, you achieve, you reap the fruits. What does the saying go? You reap the fruits. Yeah, you reap the fruits of your practice. Your practice bears fruit. Yeah. Without right view, you get attached. So there was a time when I found out that Shufu always changed the ceremonies. The ceremonies weren't always the same when Shufu was around. Shufu would add this and take this, or add more things and remove that, or change it entirely. And knowing that actually made me afflicted, because I thought the ceremonies were set in stone, that it always has to be that way. You can't change it. Why? Because I had no right view. I had no wisdom. I was just attached to the form. And also, at one time, we were really, really close to changing how monastics look. The designs had been drawn, and Shufu had approved them with, I'm not sure what the decision-making process was, but I think the monks and nuns and Shufu at that time were all okay. They were happy. The only reason why we still look like the Chinese monks that we look is because towards the last step, when they were thinking about what material to use, no one could come to an agreement. So we are still wearing those clothes. So Shufu, when he came to the US, he said he doesn't want to teach us Indian Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism. He just wanted to teach us what the Buddha taught. Meaning, Shufu didn't want us to be trapped by tradition. tradition has a way of uh, um, locking in the way you do something. Tradition, the bad side of tradition, um, removes, how you say, removes logical thinking from the equation. You just follow along. It's good. You know it's good, and but you're not quite sure why. You don't really understand why, and you don't really ask questions either, because the questions that you ask, sometimes people may not have the answers, and you don't want to make them embarrassed, or they don't want to be embarrassed. So when you ask the questions, you don't get a amicable response because they don't like to be embarrassed. So tradition, in a worst, from a worst case perspective, preserves and traps things the way they are without promoting understanding. And then over time, that becomes fear and superstition. Because when you take away understanding, that's what you have. When you have a way of doing things and you don't explain to people, or you don't understand why you're doing it, but you know you have to do it, then it becomes rigid. And you, how you say, all kinds of rules or fear takes the place of wisdom. I have a personal example about this. I have been looking for a cup where there's a special cup that is how you say, I think it's a Chinese invention. It's a double wall, like an insulated cup, where it has a removable strainer on top. So what you do is you can put in your tea leaves, and then you can fill it up with hot water, and then you put the strainer on top. So when you pour out your tea, the leaves don't come out. And so recently I found one, and it had the Heart Sutra inscription on it. And I was told that everyone was afraid of using the cup because of the Heart Sutra. And if they this vessel is actually made of glass, so it's a bit fragile. So everyone was really afraid to use it, because what happens if you actually break the mug? Then you somehow or other you are creating an offense, because it's the Heart Sutra on the mug. So from if if you have a rudimentary understanding of cause and effect, karma and intention, you know that intention plays a huge role in whether you're breaking the precepts or whether you're creating an offense or not. So with right view, you become confident and you are not afraid. But without right view, you are governed instead by what seems to be so-called logical ways of seeing things, which are in fact not based on the Dharma at all, but based on fear. And it prevents you, from doing a simple thing like using a mug. Yeah. So yes, right view is really, really important. So today, so far, it's almost time. We have only covered one of the 4 unsurpassed vows, which is living beings are boundless. I vow to save them all. And then next week, that we will talk about afflictions are endless. I vow to cut them off. All right. And it is time to. Oh, okay. We have a question. Let me see if I can find the question. Okay. Okay, so Guatli has a question about, she says that she realizes vow is both a noun and also a verb. And that's really good, because that's very good insight. And then she says that Shufu has an explanation. Let me see. Okay, so her question is this. She says, is both bringing forth the Bodhi resolve and practice by upholding the precepts are in vows? And how much a person understands, the person puts it into practice to the best of their abilities. The second part of your question, how much a person understands, put it into practice to the best of the abilities? Yes, because that's the only thing you can do. You can only practice to the extent which you understand. The extent of your right views will determine the effectiveness of your practice in a manner of speaking, which is why right views is really important. And being mindful of your practice leads you to increasing your right views. And then and then the first part of your question, do vows contain bringing forth the Bodhi resolve and practicing upholding the precepts? Well, that depends on your vows. If your vows are far-reaching, then yes, it involves bringing forth the Bodhi resolve. It doesn't have to be explicit in saying you bring forth the Bodhi resolve, but it can contain those elements. And upholding the precepts, if your vows are proper vows, as in they are based on right views, then yes, you will the precepts by right should be included. Upholding the precepts should be included in those vows. All right. Okay. So I shall not keep everyone longer. I apologize for not sharing the 32 hallmarks today. That's because I wanted to finish speaking about the right view before next week. Okay, let me share. How do I? Okay, end slideshow, and then let me share the dedication of merit. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Okay, I'm going to invite everyone to join me in putting your palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, we're going to bow 3 bows to Buddha. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, everyone, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.